Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into this edition of Unidentified History, coming to you here today on this lovely Saturday. Happy Disclosure Day. Basically is what's going on. I want to welcome everybody in who is watching this on X or YouTube, or I guess I could actually, there's some bells and whistles here with the new live stream that I'm working on that I don't even know what's happening. There's a chat, something happening with a chat. I don't know. But anyway, if you want to message us as we're going along, please feel free to do so. We will try and see what's going on. Like I've said, we're still getting used to all this live streaming sort of stuff and working this out. And I keep upgrading accounts, and I'm like, what does this do? This button does this? Wow, that's kind of cool. So yeah, we got some stuff happening. But I am your host, the lawyer Dave Unger, coming to you here today to talk about Age of Disclosure. The documentary came out yesterday, November 21st. And it's so funny that, because I remember when I first came up with the idea for Unidentified History, and of course, actually, before I go there, let me welcome in the second part of the dynamic duo here for the Age of Disclosure discussion, the one and only PC Tunney. Tunney, how you feeling, man? I know you've been like down in NyQuil and posting a lot of stuff about golf club. You can't golf, can you? Your season is over, isn't it?
If I didn't feel, I'm doing better today. Am I all better? No, but am I better than yesterday? Most definitely. Am I better than when we did DWI 500? Yes, I am
All
surprised I
right,
made it through that. That was
hold
that
on.
was a
Let's
go ahead.
let us stop right there before we get into Age of Disclosure. Something equally important happened this week. The 500th episode of the DWI podcast. That was a great time. You and DPP, we even got Dan's brother Joe on there. We got all these throwbacks from people from the past, and people originally on the DWI who I was like, that dude's still alive, Sort of like Mike's still alive.
It was it was
It
awesome.
was a
It was
great.
great. At one point, we had 13 people on the show at one time, and a personal record. I hope to never have that many people on one show ever again. But that was so cool
Right.
to have Kayleen stop in. Too bad we couldn't get Chris's mic worked out. I messaged Amber yesterday and said, "Can you write these instructions down for Chris so when you're not home we could talk to him?" To which I received
Don't
some
know why he
laughter.
just didn't like just talk through your computer, man. He's trying to get that old school microphone. And that was the joke. The meme unto itself the whole time was watching Chris try and get his microphone working and just failing the whole time. And we love Chris Flat. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But yeah, it was a great time. And I know we kind of toyed with the idea about live streaming the 500th episode, but with people jumping in and out, it just wasn't going to be practical. It causes too many problems with the platform we're using right now. So congratulations and kudos to you guys on 500 episodes. That is no small feat, man. No small feat.
It's funny because working up to it, you're like, it's so far away, it's so far away. Even when you get like past 450, it's still almost a year away. But then we got to it, and then after we did it, I was really proud and I was really thankful for all of you guys. It meant a lot to all you guys show up, and everybody had a good time. But getting back to what we're doing here today, which is very important, would you almost say that this upgraded version of Riverside, you're almost having to reverse engineer this technology for yourself, are you not?
I see what you did there, Tony. That's very good. It is interesting because, there's so much stuff that we're still kind of like sorting through and figuring out, okay, like what's actually going on and that sort of thing. And yeah, there's a little bit of reverse engineering, I would say, kind of happening as we're going along, but it's fun. It's a fun time, and we're learning as we go along. So yeah, as we said, congratulations on the 500th episode of DWI. Awesome. Let's talk about, so where I was going with that before I got sidetracked was Age of Disclosure. When we first came up with the idea for Unidentified History, which was, and I gotta go back and look at this real quick and see like when was the very first episode of Unidentified History, because that'll give you an idea as to when we kind of thought about this whole thing coming up. And all right, let's go back to March. I think it was in March. Was it March? Okay, so Game Gone Wrong launched in March. People are like, why are they going through all this history? It's important. Bear with me for a moment, guys. It'll all make sense in the end because yeah, okay, so the first episode of Unidentified History launched in May. And it was on the May 1st, 2025, where I blatantly stole from Cody Rhodes and called the episode From Undesirable to Undeniable. And I remember when we first came up with the idea for Unidentified History, like I'd gone to you guys and I said, hey, look, I know DJ likes this paranormal stuff. I'm really into this. what do you think about this, Tunney? Should we make a separate show? And you were like the one who says, no, just do it all under Attitude of Aggression under the banner. And I'm like, okay, wouldn't be a good time to do this. And I was like, they got this great documentary that has got all this buzz called Age of Disclosure. And they just showed it at South by Southwest. And it got, pretty strong reviews. And I'm like, this would be the perfect time to launch Unidentified History when that documentary launches, because it'll be a really good talking point and a great entry point for people to talk about, for us to get into this whole topic conversation. And then April came and no news about Age of Disclosure. And then May started to arrive. And I'm like, man, let's just start this thing. And this documentary will come out any day now and we'll get back to it. So fast forward 6 months later, basically, and we finally got the Age of Disclosure documentary that came out on November 21st on Prime. And it was in limited run or limited locations. There's one in New York City, one in Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles. And I was at the Los Angeles premiere last night. And before I get into stuff I want to talk about, I will say packed house in LA last night. Like the theaters, one of those like old school, like those old school cinemas you used to go to when you were kind of a kid, before all the giant IMAX screens and X and all this crap that I know you are a big fan of the 3D and that sort of thing, Tunney, and Screen X and all that sort of stuff. Before the mega cinemas came in, you used to have these little, these little sort of cinemas out there that you can go to, and a lot of them got converted into like draft houses and things like that. Then a few of them got converted into adult theaters, and we don't have to talk about that. But yeah, but
The Pee
it
Wee
had this,
Herman side of the game.
yeah, exactly. But they had, the smallish feel to it, and it was really these cool cinemas, and that's what Lumiere Theater, Cinema and Music Hall was like. So it was nice. It was nice. Saw some people. I shouted out some people earlier today as to people I saw there. I didn't really talk to too many people. I just kind of kept to myself because I don't want to seem like a weird ass stalker going up to me. Hey man, I seen you on YouTube. That's just the way I am. It's not shy; it's respectful. But I did see, Danny Sheehan was there, the attorney. A lot of people in the community know him. Pavel Ibarra, hey Pavel, he was there. Dan Cleary was there. Lester Nair was there. Matt Ford from the Good Trouble Show. And I was tagging Matt on something today. I'm standing there on the corner after the show's done. And I'm just kind of like looking at the phone. And my wife, who I wish I could get her on, but she's running errands right now. She did make a cameo on DWI 500. So bravo to Kayleen for that. She was at home. She couldn't make it down to LA with me because we couldn't find anybody to watch the puppies. So she had to stay back here. And she started the movie and she was going to watch it like at the same time I was watching in the theaters. She did not know, though, that where we were in the theater, they were showing previews for the movie. And they kept showing this one preview and it was glitching out. So it would glitch out and then the screen would go black for like 5 minutes. We're all just sitting there like, what the shit is going on? And then they would start the movie again, the preview again, and it would glitch out again. And we're like, what the fuck? And then they did it a third time. And when they did it the third time, everybody started booing. And they got wise to it. So they skipped through all of the previews and got the movie going. But there's about I'd say a 10 to 15 minute gap between my wife watching it at home back here and me watching it down there. And with about 15 minutes left in the movie, she just texted me, wow, and 3 hand claps. I'll talk a little bit about her thoughts on the movie as we go along. I think where I want to start with this and the fact that the movie finally came out and it was very eagerly anticipated. And there's all sorts of talking points about how and why this was delayed, and no one really knows. Dan Farah has been doing a media blitz. He was on the Joe Rogan show, big numbers there. And I didn't want to mention like Matt Ford. So what I was talking about was Matt Ford hosts a Good Trouble show. He had on a bunch of people involved with the movie like the night before. I urge everybody to watch that episode. So Matt's standing on the corner next to me. And I'm like, and it's so funny to me, like you see these people on YouTube, right? And we've done it. We've seen it with pro wrestlers at these events, right? You see somebody on YouTube or something like TV and they walk by you and you're not in your brain. You're like, is that who I think it is? And it doesn't quite register. And it's like, and I'm like, looking, it's like, is that Matt Ford? I'm like, I'm not sure if that's who it is. And then like 5 guys come up, hey, Matt Ford, we saw your show. And it's like, okay, that is him. And I think his wife got him and they walked away, that sort of thing. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Those are little little stories about last night. Nice neighborhood, Beverly Hills. I'll say that. I was overdressed for the occasion because I hear Hollywood premiere, LA premiere. So I go down there with a suit and tie on, right? I opted not to wear my jacket. It's like, it's 64 degrees. I'm not going to do that. My wife's like, well, where are you going to put the jacket? Hey, your car might get broken into. I was like, babe, we're in Beverly Hills, not Bakersfield. There ain't nobody breaking into. I put the jacket in the trunk just to make you feel better. But anyway, so those are all sorts of fun things. I think I want to start this off by going to you first, honey. And the reason I want to go to you first is because I think that this movie is not so much a movie for me. I think it's more for people like you. And I say people like you, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful. You know, I love you. You're my bestie. I'm not saying it like that. I'm saying it in the context that it's a movie for, you have not studied this stuff like I have for decades and that sort of thing. You're interested in it. And, I've been imparting some of my own information and wisdom to you where I can. And that's not to say that I'm smart or anything like that, but I have studied this stuff and I'm older than you, as Patrick O'Dowd
You
will
are.
remind me
You very
tomorrow.
much are. It's a true
Yeah,
story.
I thank you. Thank you, Tony. Patrick will remind me
I'm
about it at least 3 times
trying
tomorrow.
to catch up to you with my forehead though.
With
So
the forehead, yeah, yeah. But you think you are maybe a notch above what I would say the prime target audience on this thing, and I think the prime target audience for Age of Disclosure, because I messaged this and I posted this to Dan Zetterstrom, to Andy at that UFO podcast, and a few other people who have caught on to it. That from my standpoint, from people like me and people who study this stuff and deep in the community, those of us who are air quoting in the know because we don't know shit, but we think we know. We know enough to be dangerous. It's not really a movie targeted for us because we knew 90% of what was in that movie already. And that might be even a low, I mean, it may be closer to like 92, 93. There's a few things that I hadn't heard before, but not many. So it's not a movie that's going to sway us because people on our end of the fence are going to be, at this point, we're like, God damn it, the president's got to say something. Somebody come up and disclose something. Show us the evidence. Show us the clear photos. And of course, if you watch the movie, there's a pretty good reason and a good explanation as to why there are no clear photos. But then earlier in the movie, you got all these guys, Lou Elizondo, Jay Stratton, Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis, all saying that there are clear pictures of these things that are mind numbing. It leaves no doubt in your mind. Of course, they're all classified and you can't see them, which is the big problem that people like me have with this. But for somebody like you, or even a notch below you, like somebody who, and I've said this, it's like, I think this movie is the perfect entry point for a topic that is as dense and deep as the UAP phenomenon because it is so much information out there and so many different nuances to it and so many different places where you could say, well, where do I start? I mean, I've been asked that by people, who are interested. Where do I start? And I never really know exactly what to tell them because there is so much to it. It's like, do you point them to Roswell? Do you say, hey, go watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind? That's where I started. That sort of thing. Do you point them to the Tic Tac encounter in 2004 and all the controversy surrounding that? There has never been a really good answer until last night. And I think Age of Disclosure is the perfect entry point for somebody who's trying, like, where do I begin? Begin here. And then find out, watch the movie, find out for yourself what interests you. Aspects of the movie are going to interest you. Some of it more than others, no doubt about that. Find what interests you and then dig deeper. But I think from the standpoint of where this phenomenon has gone, because this does a great job of leading you from when Lou Elizondo first came in with, A-tip, all that fun stuff. And we'll get into some more aspects of that in a minute. But from when he started, him and Jay Stratton first started looking into this, all the way up to the 2017 New York Times article, which I've equated many times on this, is like when the WWE network launched in 2014, right? And it saw the boom of all the wrestling podcasts like ours. 2017 New York Times article is the WWE network equivalent of ufology, because it was the moment where a lot of people started to jump into UFO podcasts, became more accessible, a lot more information got out there. There's a lot more ability to, basically triangulate this information and get exactly what you need from multiple sources. And triangulate's probably not even the right word. It's more like pentabulate. Take a Pentagon approach to this sort of thing. No pun intended. But I think Age of Disclosure is the perfect entry point for somebody who, where do I begin? You show them this video and you turn them loose and you say, go research whatever aspect of this struck a chord with you. Go and look into that deeper. I think this is the perfect entry point for somebody like that. But I want to go to you now. You've done several of these episodes with us. You've been there for all the historical deep dives that we've done, the stuff that it's me, it's you, it's DJ, it's Rob, it's ChatGPT weighing in. There's the collaboration between me and ChatGPT trying to do, and I've heard this, where we kind of, the first thing we ever did was the Battle of Los Angeles, and ChatGPT was starting to look at stuff a little bit differently and say, hey, do you want me to do this picture of the flying saucer and remove some of these elements to make it more like what may have been there that night? Well, yeah, sure, man. If you if you can do that, and then
Say less.
that is kind of, yeah, and that's kind of taken on a life of its own. And I've heard other people now on other shows and other people involved with the whole UFO phenomenon say that, yeah, let's take a look at these historical cases through the eyes and let AI run with this thing and pick up on things we may have missed. So you've done all this stuff with me. We've done several of these. We've done Battle of Los Angeles. We've done Trinity. We did Flight 19. We did the Ghost Rockets, Costa Carlson. So you've been around. You've seen a lot of this stuff. Your thoughts on Age of Disclosure? What did you like? What did you not like? And does this move somebody in your posture in a certain direction?
For me, it doesn't really move me any which way. I like the fact that, like, for me, it's the first time I get the whole story from the 40s till present day, right? They kind of chronologically describe to you what makes sense on what's happening, and I enjoyed that. And they do it from a perspective where they're not trying to scare you. They're not trying to over exaggerate anything. They're just saying these are facts. Here's all these people that have legitimate government credentials and have been involved in these things. And then on top of that, you get these guys telling you not only is this stuff going on, but it's been readily known in inner circles and not only kept from the public, but kept from certain parts of the government. So as to them having plausible deniability, right? Things like that, even all the way up to the president. But yeah, like you said, this is a great place for people to start. Like if you don't know what the hell the history of this is and how that all those pieces connect, you don't have that full grandiose of the whole story, you need to watch this. It goes by really quick. The people that are in it are very eloquent and they get to their point and it comes across well. No one's there trying to badger you into believing anything. It's just basically facts after facts with tons of different scientists and government officials and the military and just brilliant people here just trying to let you know that don't be surprised, when there's way more to this than we are allowed to tell you right now, because we're trying to get enough attention so that the whole story can come out, and that's what was really interesting to me.
And I love that you said that. And you are critical to this discussion because, yeah, my opinions are going to be my opinions, but I'm much more interested in like what you thought of it, what DJ thought of it, what Rob thinks of it. My wife's thoughts on this are, and we talked for about a good 15 minutes this morning and about this. I mean, about other stuff, of course, but about this. And she was like, she thought it was really good. She felt very bad for Lou Elizondo and the stuff that he went through. And look, I understand that Lou Elizondo is a very controversial figure in ufology. And a lot of that stems from the misinformation that was discussed in the movie, and they talk about the government basically saying, yeah, he never worked here, he never did this. And a lot of people have grabbed onto that and latched onto it. I never necessarily bought that aspect of the criticism of Lou Elizondo. Has he put forward pictures that have been debunked? Yes, that is true. That there's no doubt about that. When I interviewed Ivan Hanel months ago, and Ivan, of course, was Lou's former attorney. And Ivan said, Lou is just putting stuff out there. He's not exactly endorsing all this stuff as being real or not. He's just running with certain things. And I get that. And, should Lou have like vetted some of this stuff a little bit more thoroughly? Probably, that sort of thing. But, everybody makes mistakes in this field. Nothing is, and that's okay. If you come out there and say, hey, look at this picture, and it's debunked as, if it's really a balloon or if it's really a plane or if it's really something else, that's fine. Great. Now we have an explanation, prosaic explanation. Let's move on to the next thing. Great. Perfect. But yeah, I think she felt
We got our first person just right away. Just to let you guys know, if you do message us, we're going to talk to you, ask us some questions, just so you guys know we are paying attention. Shout out to Monto Patrick from France saying hello. Thanks for listening. Sorry, Dave.
Oh, yeah. No. Welcome. Thank you. Welcome aboard from France. That's awesome.
Oui, oui.
That's right. At least Tunney,
Viva la unidentified history.
yeah, Tunney's not known for his French, just so you know, but he's trying. He's
Voulez-vous que
trying, and that's yes. There you go. Exactly.
That's about it.
No, welcome. It's awesome that somebody from, we got somebody from France checking this out and that sort of thing. So getting back, I mean, there's the obvious criticism of Lou Elizondo that goes out there. He's a disinformation agent. He's this and he's that. You're entitled to your own opinion. And I'm not, going to sit there and say that everything he did was right or everything is accurate. I think if there is having such a heavy focus on Lou and to a lesser extent Jay Stratton is going to alienate some of the community. There's no doubt about that. And I've already seen it online and understandable. The thing I come back to on this movie is all of these military personnel, people involved with the program, people who have done all this research. These are highly credible, highly credentialed people. Yeah, Clapper has his own issues and his own sort of stuff where he's had a lot of problems in the past. I get all that. But you got a lot of people who, at least credential wise, seem very credible. They've got the right history, they've got the right pedigree, they've been there on the front lines of this stuff to see all this stuff. And I always come back to the whole thing, well, what is their motivation to lie, to this extent? And that's where I've always had the problem with the whole thing, like, all of them are just lying full of shit grifters, right? And I've always, everybody knows me as a background. I'm an attorney. So I'm looking at the evidence. I'm looking at motivation. What's their motive to lie? What would they get out of this? Because a lot of people thought this movie would be about amnesty. And let's give amnesty to the people who have fucked over the American public for all these years and lied to them. I think I heard amnesty mentioned like once in the movie, and that was near the end. So there wasn't this whole big drive. Hey, let's give amnesty to everybody involved and we'll come clean. I never got that impression from the movie. Did you? Did you get that?
No, the opposite actually, where we're kind of making sure not to cross a line that we don't want to have to deal with the consequences for, right? I don't know how many times Lou said, I want to tell you more, but I can't. And hopefully I'm being loud enough with what I am telling you now so that people will pay attention, because it sticks with me, the thing where he says, it's maybe not word for word, but like, I don't want people to be so surprised at how much more there is. Like there's a lot more. You just can't do nothing about it right at the moment.
Yeah, that's and that's the issue is that so many people have the issue with this. It's like it's all classified. There's so much I want to tell you, but I can't. And that gets to the heart of the problem on this is that you have got a situation where there's so many different levels of secrecy and things that you can say and things you can't say. Somebody today, one of the bigger debunking sort of accounts out there said, subpoena Dan Farah, subpoena everybody in the movie, bring him into Congress, force them to testify. And I'm like, what good does it do to subpoena all these people if Congress does not have the authority to immunize these people, to get them to waive their NDAs, to get them to waive their secrecy oaths? There's problem one. And two, even if they could, as you found out in this movie, Congress isn't authorized to receive this information, even if they could compel them to testify. The president of the United States is not authorized to receive that information because he, the most powerful man in the world, does not have the proper security clearance. If you listen to what Marco Rubio, the Secretary of the State, said, and it's all because of plausible deniability, which I'm like, man, Roland Emmerich in Independence Day 30 years ago, he was onto something. Remember, why wasn't I told about this? 2 words, Mr. President, plausible deniability.
Well, they talk about it too, right? Like it's not the head of the agency. That's an elected supervisor, basically. It's the person that's been there in the position of like running a certain department for 30 years. They have all the knowledge. This guy's just got there and he's going to forget it and the next guy's going to come in. You want the people that have been, they talk about the legacy program and how like this is just almost an Illuminati for UAPs, right? It's like you don't need to know. He doesn't know. The most powerful person doesn't know. We're going to even deny we exist or that anything happens here, right? To the point where the Navy's like, hey, we're seeing this stuff. And the Air Force is like, nah, man, I don't see it. It'd be like if the Air Force, and they explained it too, it'd be like if the Air Force is like, hey, Navy, we see something in the water. And Navy's like, nah, we're down here. Don't see nothing, bud. We're just a big whale. No big deal.
Eddie Murphy Raw. Wasn't me. I saw your face. Wasn't me.
And now, and now Now that Eddie Murphy joke would go, you heard of AI, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was fake. It was a deep fake. No, but that's a great point that yeah, there's people embedded into these programs who aren't subject to term limits. Don't have to worry about, elections and that they're implanted into this and they're there for 30 years and yeah, I get their mindset is like you assholes come and go. I'm going to be here today, tomorrow, the next day, 30 years from now. Why should I give you anything when
It's
I'm the one really protecting the world and the nation from this stuff?
it's almost like a prominent university. They've been tenured. They're not going anywhere. They're the ones there with the you know the sheer existence and depth of time that they have there is their power, is their foot above.
And honestly, I get while I don't agree with that rationale, I get it. And to a certain extent, it does make some sense that, you want the true safety of the nation to be imbued to somebody who has got the historical pulse of everything that's going on. But yeah, you can't have it. You almost create like this shadow government where you've got everything on the top that, the president and in Congress and all that, but they're really just the tip of the iceberg. And it's everything below the surface that is really, it's like the deep web, the dark web, that sort of thing. It's very analogous to that. So yeah, I thought that aspect of things was really, it wasn't anything I didn't already know or hadn't already heard before. But I will say the one thing about, I said earlier that 90% of this movie is stuff we've already heard. People like me have already heard. But seeing it laid out like they did in this interwoven story where they come from and they tell you, like you're saying, they take you back in time to stuff that happened in the 40s, confirm Roswell was real. We got 4 alien bodies from this whole thing. It was an alien crash. Um, and they bring it forward. And as I'm watching this stuff and you get to see the secret and like things that I know replayed in front of you. Honestly, man, the biggest emotion I felt after watching most of that movie last night was I was pissed off. I was just like mad. Like, what the fuck? I mean, why are we just hiding so much of this stuff? Why can't we get the truth? Why is there this insistence on hiding this? It's a bigger issue than national security. This is humanity we're talking about. And you hear this stuff at the end. This is clean energy. Andre Carson, I think he was the one who said, "You're talking teleportation." Yeah, man, we're talking teleportation. There's things here that redefine, like Lou said, the trajectory of our species, and that's just being hidden from humanity. That's just not right. I mean, to have just a handful of people dictating the trajectory and the progress of our species. That's just not right, man. That's what I think. I don't know.
Well, that's kind of what Schumer was saying too, right? Like that's just irresponsible to not allow the rest of humanity to know what's going on. And the funny thing is we've like in our brief history on this show, we've kind of tackled all these moral dilemmas and like different things of how the world should be worried about coming together to work on figuring out what's going on, right? Because they specifically tell you, hey, China, Russia, and US. Outside life has made contact with them, and all 3 of these nations have stuff from that outside contact. They all have Tic Tacs. They likely all have bodies. They likely, and to the point where whatever is on the outside has already come in and turned on or off these nuclear defense systems to kind of say, hey, just so you know, you can't do anything, right? And then they even brought up the fact that, is this a crash? Or was this something that was sent to us to educate us, right? And we've talked about all this different thing, right? So you specifically brought up the fact that the nuclear things, that it's like a beacon that goes out into the ethos, that they hear it and they wonder, well, they talk about the ramp up of civilization. Now we've gotten just smart enough to be just dangerous enough to be paid attention to over the last 80
Yeah.
years. Before that, it was kind of like, well, it's going to take that guy on the other side of the world probably a year and a half to connect with that guy on the other side of the world. And that's only if he's probably in the top 5% of money wise. Now I can talk to someone on the other side of the world in 5 seconds.
Yeah. And hopefully, anybody on the live stream, I hope that you don't get to hear all the dogs going crazy,
I
but
can't hear him.
Penny's not. I hope nobody out there hears it as well. But, I've got dogs and somebody just walked in the house.
They're
So
not, they're
time to
not
go
really
crazy.
dogs. They're not really dogs.
That's
They're
true.
just, they're
That's
just,
true. They're
they're
AI.
vessels.
They're
They're vessels.
They're AI as well. No, but like you're saying, the notion of the crash retrieval program. And one of the big things that people have always asked is like, if these guys are so technologically advanced, why are they crashing? Well, there's a couple reasons, that some discussed in the movie. Some I would refer people back to my interview with Samuel Chong, where we talked about the Theoba prophecy. and that sort of thing. And that a lot of these aliens who are coming, or the ETs that are crashing or whatever they are, may not be as technologically advanced as some of the other species of NHI that is coming to the planet. Now that may be true, that some of them might just be like real rudimentary, not that far. Hey, not that far over advanced from us, that sort of thing. But I do like the fact that, some of them could be legitimate crashes. Some of them could be getting gifted to us. That's really true. Hey, here's some technology. This helps push you forward. One thing that wasn't discussed in there is the notion that if these were intentional, is it akin to the NHI? Could they possibly be giving the kids the matches to play with, right? Like maybe it's not advancing us. Maybe it's sabotaging us. We don't know. If they're saying, hey, yeah, go and play around, screw around with this thing for a while and see what you come up with, once somebody, because it is true, like whichever of the nations cracks the code first, they take a big lead. It'd be like the way that we were for a period of, I think, like 4 years there before when we got the atomic bomb, before the Russians had it. And whoever breaks that is going to have a big advantage at this point in time as far as technology and that sort of things. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a really good point. I hadn't thought about it until they said it here, was that, hey, maybe this is more intentional. Maybe it isn't a question of pilots crashing and all that sort of stuff. Maybe it's something different entirely. So, um, it's a good point. Hey, you guys, nobody
The other
nobody
thing,
listening right now wants to hear you.
they can't hear them. The other thing too is maybe they're trying to protect us and show us, hey, you guys keep screwing around like this. You keep being violent with each other. Your whole planet's gonna be gone, right? And maybe there's something here that they need, and they're just like, why don't we wait until they calm down a little bit? They're kind of a violent species.
Well, yeah, I mean, at some point we go from, like they said in the movie, at some point we go from the ants in the backyard to the ants in your kitchen, and that's when you're going to get the attention of the NHI to say, okay, this is no longer just a nuisance and an annoyance. Like, as long as they're outside, I don't give a shit. Once they start coming in the kitchen, in the bathtub, and you find them in your Cheerios and stuff, then it's a real problem. And I think, we are rapidly approaching that, because they talk about in the movie, numerous, and I don't remember exactly if they talk about it in the movie or elsewhere, but maybe it was Dan Farrow talking on Joe Rogan's show about several situations where, like, especially in Russia, where the Russians have gone and engaged these UAPs, and the pirates don't come back from those because, you know, this, this is what happens when you engage superior technology and you're not prepared for it. Speaking of superior technology, what did you think of the explanation as to how these things might be getting here? The space-time bubble, because this is, I think, several months ago, I texted this out that everybody, I believe I've got this right. Lou Elizondo's book, Imminent, which I highly recommend people read, chapter 16 goes into this whole thing that Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis, and Lou was there. He didn't come up with this, but he heard it and transcribed it, that sort of thing. The space-time bubble. I think we've talked about it on Unidentified History as well. This whole notion of how are they getting here? If they're really coming from multi-light, many, many light years away, how could they possibly? Because that is the biggest stiff arm that you get from a lot of the skeptics and the debunkers, is the distances are too fast. That also operates from the premise that Einstein's theory of relativity establishes that light speed is the absolute, you can't breach it, which I've never subscribed to that, because I think it's based on our current understanding of physics, but what's that going to be like in 100 years? That sort of thing. But the notion of the space-time bubble, that these craft are able to generate a ridiculous amount of energy. How they generate that energy, they really weren't quite sure of. 0 point something different. Could it be warp drives? Could it be this element 115 that Bob Lazar talked about all those years ago? I don't know. But the notion that these craft can create a space-time bubble around themselves, and really they're not accelerating through any sort of means of propulsion per se, as much as they are bending space-time around them, and they just kind of slide into the slot. And you end up from one place. And if you can manipulate space-time, you don't have to worry about propulsion. You basically can, it's like quantum realming it, like in Avengers Endgame or something like that. You just go in at one point, come out another point. Now, whether that applies to time or not, I don't know, but it certainly does apply to space. And there's things to go on with wormholes, and it explains a lot as to why does time pass differently when you're close to these objects as opposed to when you're outside of it. How can they execute these sorts of maneuvers at G forces that would liquefy every, like I think it was David Fravor said, that would be bad. It's like, yeah, it's not good to subject your body to G forces like that. I'm just wondering, like, I know I've mentioned it to you guys before, but actually hearing it explained by people much smarter than me and who actually understand physics, what did you take away from that?
I thought of exactly what I said on this podcast previously when we talked about it. We said speaking being controlled remotely, so therefore there's no effect on anything inside of said craft. Or B, almost word for word what I said is they figured out a way to protect what's inside so that it's not affected by what's going on around the outside, which is a way less scientific way of putting what they said. There's an energy bubble, right? You talk about the fact that it can go through three different parts of travel: space, open air, and water. The six things they put on that chalkboard and checked off and showed you that it's doing this, it's not giving you this. These six reasons are why it's something. They're talking about the fastest thing we have right now is like 4,000 miles an hour. And it takes that to do a left turn half the state of Ohio. Well,
And Blackbird, yeah.
these things are going 10 times as fast, 40 plus to 50,000 miles an hour, and accelerating to that immediately and taking immediate 90-degree turns and going in and out of space to the inside our atmosphere, into the water and back. And they've talked about the different times at different sites where we've had some of our best and most forward technology, and they come and hover over it and check it out, right? They talked about a missile that was being launched, one of our fastest, most easily controlled one. And one of these Tic Tacs comes around, and not only is it take a picture from the top or send these light beams. I'm thinking it's assessing everything, right? To the
Talk about the
side,
Vandenberg.
to the
Yeah, Vandenberg.
side, then it goes underneath and takes a picture underneath there, right? And just like that, how would it do that when this missile is moving at this immense
9,000
rate of
miles an hour.
yeah, and it's just kind of boop, boop, boop. And it's ridiculous. And like you said, it is almost going to be like, hey, let's get this engineered so I can golf with Dave tomorrow. I can just be like,
Yeah.
hey, I'll be there in 5 minutes, Milwaukee
Your
to
season will never
Bakersfield.
end out here, Tony. So there you go.
Boom.
Yeah.
You know, Tomorrow we'll go play on some crazy course in Japan. And then the next day after that, we'll play in Saudi and, it'll be good to go.
Awesome. I'm here for it. Yeah, you're talking about the Bob Jacobs description of the Vandenberg incident, which is I mean, this stuff, like, they filmed it like over Big Sur out here in California, the whole thing, the missile going 9,000 miles per hour and this UFO just attacking a dummy warhead. And you say, well, why couldn't it tell that there was no active payload there? But maybe it was just making a show of it to demonstrate, hey, if you guys try and launch an actual warhead, here's what we can do. The same thing at Malmstrom, Minot Air Force Base, turning missiles off. You got see Robert Salas was in the movie talking about that. Incidents in Russia where the missiles were turned on and they were pointed at us. And that's a big problem.
I think that here's the difference between the other intelligent life forms and us. We're trying to harness this energy to use against each other for power. They're probably likely harnessing the same type or similar types of energy to advance their civilization and expand and explore the universe. Whereas we're just sitting here trying to hold it against each other.
You're absolutely right. It's a big problem is that we're looking at this technology from the standpoint of military advantage, how we can do this to eliminate our enemy instead of how can we do this to better our planet, better our species, have peace amongst humanity, have all of us working together to help us evolve spiritually, physically, mentally, whatever the case may be. Like you're saying, we're looking at this all the wrong way. Everything's, it's everything's bottom heavy at this point. No one's looking at this thing like the way you should, and that's unfortunate, but that is, and there's big money involved. And speaking of big money, one of the big things they talk about the UAPDA and the private contractors, and where this becomes such a big problem is the transfer of the sensitive material from the government to private contractors. And similar to the whole notion of where you've got the president and these other elected officials who are there for a very limited time. And then the people below them are the ones really running things. You can make a apples to apples sort of comparison between the government, the Pentagon, and private contractors. Because, yeah, at one point, the government may have had a crash retrieval, some technology, something that they wanted to give to private contractors. My wife, one of the things she asked me was like, I don't understand why the government just doesn't do this themselves. It's like, well, because all the best people are getting paid more by the private contractors. And that's why the best people are working for the private contractors. They're the most qualified to work on this. And that's, not a slight on public servants and that sort of thing, just a fact. That's how it works. You make more money in the private sector. But you take this material, you transfer it to these contractors, these private contractors. They get that stuff, and the guy at the government who gave that material to the private contractor in the first place either moves on, dies, or something, and it's forgotten. And then like his successor comes in there, and there's no not going to be a paper trail for that. Highly unlikely there's going to be or at least not a paper trail that's readily accessible. Maybe buried under 22 levels of secrecy. But you get that, and then you've got these private contractors who get this stuff, and they're just, going around it, and they basically just morph this stuff into their own intellectual property at some point. And so, 40 years later, when somebody in the government says, "Hey, wait, something happened 40 years ago. What happened to this piece of wild out there tech that we gave to?" And I'll just use not saying specifically them, but let's say Lockheed Martin or Boeing or Northrop Grumman or something like that. We gave it to them. What did they ever do with that? I have no fucking idea. That sort of thing. Maybe we should find out what's happening to that. The private contractor's like, we don't know what you're talking about. So you get to see the whole UAPDA and why the eminent domain was such an integral part of that. And I've been adamantly against the whole eminent domain provision in the UAPDA because I thought there's going to be so much pushback on this that you will never get this to pass. And while no one has specifically come out and said, yeah, it's the eminent domain that has killed this thing, you can see why there'd be billions of reasons why certain people would not want that aspect of the UAPDA to be there. So I want to get your thoughts on that. The whole notion of the private contractors who are not subject to FOIA, right? And there's something else I talked to my wife about, and I'm talking about it this morning. They are not subject to FOIA. They would be subject to a subpoena for records. The problem is, to get jurisdiction over that, you got to file a lawsuit. You can't just subpoena people for the fuck of it. You can't just go out there and say, yeah, I'm going to drop a subpoena on you. Let's go for it. It doesn't work that way. You got to have a lawsuit generally attached to this so that the court has jurisdiction to issue a subpoena. What are you going to sue them for? And even if you could get a subpoena on them, they can say, well, we cut a deal with the Department of Defense, Department of War 30 years ago, and they're all privileged. We can't give that to you. There's no state judge who's going to enforce that damn thing. They're going to be like, oh, okay, never mind. I mean, maybe one of them might have the guts to try and challenge the government, but I kind of doubt it. Yeah. What do you think of all this? I mean, it is realms of secrecy within the private sector. It's not just the government. This bleeds into the private sector as well.
I mean, well, if you really want to, some people might want to deny it, but war is a business as well. These people are making a lot of money and they don't want to stop making it. Kind of like the oil industry. What's that? We got hydrogen propulsion inside of, car motors that we can get 70 miles to a gallon of water. We're going to have to take that away. We can't stop using oil. It's just, it all comes down to money, unfortunately, and power. And if you're going to take that away from these people, they're going to scratch and claw every chance they can get and gaslight the shit out of whatever they can. And, make you feel like what you're doing is not even there. I mean, we've seen that in different sectors as well. So it's just, it sucks. There's so much red tape and old boy network bullshit to get through to get to a spot where we can just be like, hey, I know you're Russia and I know you're China and I know we're America, and even within our own country just to work together, not just globally. It's pretty sad the state we've put ourselves in.
Yeah, it is. There is definitely an good old boys network going on with some of this stuff. And you raise a great point that it should be about everybody working together. It shouldn't be all these multiple levels of secrecy that are going on that are preventing any sort of meaningful discussion, anything that could, really be of benefit to the planet, to the species, to humanity, to whatever. Yeah, it's depressing. There's no way to put it. Other interesting aspects of the movie that I took away, the stuff about the one incident at Holloman Air Force Base where the UFOs show up and they land at the Air Force Base, and some of the aliens come out and they meet with people in the military, and there's some sort of, I don't know what they agreed upon. This is one of the most rumored meetings ever in the history of ufology. Dan Farrow was on Joe Rogan saying, I know of other ones that aren't in the film. Like he was talking about one where a dying alien telepathically communicated to a human who was there with him. Humans have not reached their full potential. I don't doubt that that's possible, that sort of thing. But
Maybe we're
what
the
did you?
key to saving the universe, Dave.
I doubt it, but you never know. It could be. And I say that one of the things I talked to my wife about, because she really got hung up on, like, one of the big things about the movie is that Jay Stratton talking about how, these elements of what we call the Collins elite, the elitists of the government who want to paint this into a corner through religion. This is demonic. You're messing with demons. This is all about demonology. Don't go any further. And Jay Stratton's like, I'm tracking shit on radar. These aren't demons I'm tracking on radar. These are aerial objects, and we're just supposed to ignore that because you think that we're interacting with demons. And like, I talking to my wife about this, and she's like, she was telling me, when I was young, this whole topic had been so stigmatized because she's much more religious than I am, and she's was raised Christian and that sort of thing. And she was like, this stuff was just told, it was all nonsense, it was all just bullshit. Stick to what we're taught in the Bible and you'll be safe, nothing to worry about. And what's
But here,
funny is,
hold on. I got to jump in for a second though, Dave, because you know what?
please,
I've been a Christian my entire life, born and raised in the Lutheran Church. And tell me where the Bible says there is or isn't aliens. Tell me where the Bible talks about life outside of Earth besides
doesn't,
creation. It
it
doesn't. So
doesn't.
whoever's doing that shit has no fucking clue what the fuck they're talking about.
You know who did it? Organized religion. Organized religion did that to tell people, to convince people that we are all created in God's image. And therefore, if we're created in God's image, we must be the apex predators of the universe, to steal from Randy Orton. And I'm like, well, the Bible never says that. Nowhere in the Bible does it says, yeah, you are it. This is it. Never says that. And like you talked about the six observables that Lou Elizondo talked about. On my end, there's three factors that really dictate the control levels of some of these players, right? Money, power, and control. Those are the three absolutes. Everything is about controlling the money, controlling power, and maintaining control of the situation. And I think that's kind of one of the angles, one of the dialogues that has been started is that, well, these things have got to be demonic because we're the only things in the universe, and it's like, where does it ever say that? I've never
Maybe
seen
we're.
that said.
How do you know we're not the devils?
Well, I mean, that's the thing is, it's like, if we are the high, and I say this, and I told my wife today, is like, I'm very critical of the human species on certain places. I do acknowledge humanity has an immense amount of potential. And I don't mean to say things about humanity that make me think I'm just so pessimistic and that we're the worst things of all time. We have unbelievable potential, untapped potential. On the other hand, we also have an enormous amount of arrogance, especially if humans think that we are the apex, as good as it gets in the universe. That's kind of a depressing thought. Out of all that space, we're the most evolved creatures in the universe. That's a little concerning. That's really the situation.
It sounds like a
Good.
group of people who have been isolated for more than 5,000 years. That's what it sounds
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. It sounds like people's like, hey, we've had nobody's come knocking on our back door yet. We must be it. It's like, well, maybe they just don't want to knock on your back door or your front door or your side door for that matter. Um, yeah, I thought that was interesting listening to Jay Stratton talk about the whole religious overtones and the aspects of the whole situation. What else did you take away from the movie that kind of struck a chord with you? I mean, they covered so much in an hour and 49 minutes.
Honestly, they go back to there's two specific ones when they're trying to paint you the picture of that this has been going on since World War II. Like again, I'll say it again, like a lot of the conversations we've been having in the last 6 months is the conversation they're having on this documentary, and we didn't
Yes.
know, but we were almost specifically saying the same thing, having the same takes. The speech that they show from John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan make you go, well, fucking A. If they're not talking about exactly what we're talking about here, well, that's the biggest coincidence I've ever fucking seen between two of the greatest presidents of all time. And you can at me at PC Tunney if you want to argue about JFK and Ronald Reagan being two of the greatest presidents of all time. You can argue with this wall over here.
Yeah. And it's interesting the stuff that they show, like the interviews with the presidents. You could tell from Bush and Clinton specifically, they know. And there's stuff that they know that they may not know the whole story, but they know a lot more than has been let on. And you can
Obama?
tell Obama as well. They're all like, "Yeah, I know stuff, but I can't really tell you about it." Like W was on there after he was out of office and said, "Is there stuff you can tell us?" "Yeah, but I'm not." That sort of thing. I mean, it's like, okay, it's kind of like trying to impart plausible deniability to us as well, and it's like that sort of thing. But yeah, overall, because I don't want to keep you here that much longer because I don't want to spoil everything. It hasn't even been, well, it's been out for 24 hours and that sort of thing. But I think the big takeaway I got from this was that this is an excellent documentary. It's very well done. It's put together very well. I think it is an excellent movie and an entry point for people who want to get caught up ish, is what I'm going to say. It's like you're not going to get caught up completely from 1942 when we started Unidentified History from the year 1942. You're not going to get caught up from there to here in an hour and 49 minutes. But this will give you an excellent framework of the things that are going on now, where the fight for disclosure is, and why it matters. Why it matters. Why do you need to pay attention? What sorts of things do I need to pay attention to? What sorts of things should I look into? And like I said at the outset, I would just say, hey, look, watch the movie, draw your own conclusions, go research further, dig deeper into the stuff that matters to you, the things that resonate with you, that strike a chord with you. Go dig a little bit deeper, look into all that stuff, and go there. This is not a topic where there's one rabbit hole. It's like whack a rabbit hole, right? Okay, there's one over here, whack. Another
It's
one
a
opens up there. You've got,
Dave,
go
it's a
ahead.
black hole.
It is. It is a black hole because you've got so many different aspects of the phenomenon, right? You've got the nuts and bolts. Hey, we want to see the craft. We all want to see the craft. We all want to see the hard scientific data and the evidence. And I know that's one of the biggest complaints is about the movies. Like, they still didn't show anything. They didn't show shit. There is no evidence. There is no clear pictures. There's no scientific data.
That's not
The
the
other thing I've
point.
heard,
That wasn't the point of this, though, right? The
it,
point of
it
this
really
was to
wasn't.
get awareness out there so that we can get to the solid evidence.
I think the point was to educate, more than illuminate, that sort of thing. I mean,
But if you
for people, go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. No, after you're done, I'll go.
I'm just saying, like, for people like me, like Andy from that UFO podcast, from Dan Zetterstrom, from What It Means to Be Human, Psychoactivo with Pavel Ibarra, all that stuff. I mean, I'm hoping, like in about a month or so, we've got the director's cut. James Fox's Moment of Contact is coming out with a new revelations, which to me sounds like a director's cut. Now, there are new things that he's done there. He's interviewed one of the doctors in Varginha, Brazil, who actually worked on the dying alien, or I think the alien was dying, and is ready to come out and testify to that. That's a huge, big moment. I'm hoping that with Age of Disclosure, like, there is a director's cut. I'm not saying it has to be Snyder's cut level, like, hey, we went from 2 hours to four. That's a lot of additional content. But I would hope there's a director's cut with more in-depth information for people like me who, hey, I want to learn something that I didn't already know. This is all great and it's slick and it's well polished and the B-roll animation is nice and it's this and it's that. But tell me something I don't know that is really going to resonate with me. And there were, I mean, look, there were things in there that I hadn't heard before. There were a couple witnesses, like the one that, I mean, I heard this before, but it'd been a while since I heard it. Like in the beginning, the guy talking about he was at NORAD, right? And they spotted a UFO. And the commander said, I want that target. And all these planes, these fighters take off on the entirety of the eastern seaboard. None of them could stop this thing. And the guy very matter of factly said, we did not have control and superiority over the American airspace. That is stunning to hear that. And it had been, if I know I'd heard that before, but it had been a very long time since I'd been presented like that. But that should be eye-opening for anybody.
And to me, that's like you lead me right back into the point I want to make is if you can inform the American public enough, and enough of the American public is going to be loudly outspoken about wanting more information, that's going to lead to more public information. If you get enough people that are saying, hey, elected official, you want to be the elected official? Give us this information, or we'll just pick somebody else that will.
Yeah, exactly. So there are a few things that came up in this that I hadn't either, I don't know about not heard before, but just hadn't heard in a while. That was one of them. there's so many examples of just
I
things and kind of
one of
like
my
you
most one of my most favorite people on this is the former head of oceanography for the Navy.
said, Tim Gallaudet.
Just like the knowledge that this guy has and the scope of what he knows, and just to sit here and be like, yeah, if someone was here and they wanted to hang out, I would hide in the water because we don't even know shit about our own planet, basically. You know what I'm saying? We're that fucking stupid and arrogant. Someone needs to break the glass for us and turn our light bulb on because we think we're so awesome. We don't even know anything about where we are.
Like you said, we've mapped the face of Mars and the moon more than we've explored our own
And you know what?
oceans.
And that's silly because you know what we've done? We're reading these books by their covers. There's so much more on the inside than there is on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's remarkable. Yeah, Tim Gallaudet is great. Chris Mellon was also very powerful figure in this whole thing, talking about clean energy, things like that. Tim Burchett comes on at the end and makes a statement in a few places. And I love Tim Burchett. He got a few, rounds of applause during the screening last night because he's been a champion of this stuff. Anna Paulina Luna, you got to give her credit. Eric Burleson. I guess the question now, as we try and wrap this up, is where do we go from here? Does this make any difference? Does this move the needle? Ross Coulthart has said that there's rumors that Trump's going to address this thing. David Grush came on and did an interview. It's the first time we've seen Grush do an interview in a while. He had a very small part to play in this movie, which is only going to further rumors of friction between Lou Elizondo and David Grush. And, whatever the case may be there. But Grush basically came on, I think it was Fox, did an interview and said Trump's been very well briefed on the whole UAP issue. So I want to go to you first. Do you think that this leads to anything? As far as like the president saying anything about any of this stuff. I mean, he's got his Secretary of State prominently plastered. And I think, they made sure they labeled him Secretary of State. Do you think this moves the needle? Does this make Trump, does he do anything along the lines of disclosure? Or is this just like, yeah, whatever?
First thing that I wanted to say was, of course, anything's better than the Epstein files.
Ah, there you go.
I hope so. I feel like Trump would be the guy to do it. Does that make sense?
It does from the standpoint that Trump would basically be like, nobody's going to tell me what to do. You think
Or
I
or
think I have to kowtow to and you know,
or he's a
I will
people
say this.
he's a people pleaser. You know that?
Yeah.
Like as far as like trying to stay a government official and in power where he is, he'll say whatever he wants to make the person across from him happy. That's like he's one of the greatest negotiators in the history of this planet. You can't take that away from him.
But I think like you're saying, Trump's biggest strength is his ability to relate to his, we'll just call it fan base, his party. Because it's not the entirety of the Republican Party who is solidly behind him, but his people, MAGA, that fan base, cling to every word he says like it is the gospel. And they are very vocal. You saw in the last election how powerful that they are, that they basically gave this dude a mandate when they elected him and they swung Congress and he was able to put his own people in the Supreme Court and basically get control over all three branches of government, right? I mean, and go ahead.
I don't know.
If there's one president who could stand up there and say, I don't give two shits about what the deep state says because I've got all the power. I've got somebody who would not be afraid to impose martial law and basically go to war against his own country. And to a certain, if it made sense for him to do so, you look at, I mean, and it's not all good. Don't get me wrong. Trump has said some stuff shit this week that is just like, whoa, what the hell are you talking about? We're not going to get political about it. But he is the kind of guy who would come out here and say, I don't give a damn. You think I can and can't say what you think I can and can't know. I'm going to do my own thing. Stop me if you can. Because I've got the people behind me. I am the commander in chief. I have the military.
Not only for that reason may he be the right person in power for this specific, UAP conversation, but he's also, as much as any other leader of this nation, been able to communicate with our adversaries.
Yeah.
If he wants to talk to Putin, Putin's going to fucking talk to him. If he wants to go to North Korea and do something with them or China, they're going to get together, right? Like he's going to put aside whatever, like he doesn't have any inner shame or trepidation or worry, or there's no anxiety there. He's Donald Trump. I'm the president of the United States. No one's more powerful than me. We're going to get together because I said so, and I have 100% you're going to show up and we're going to work on it, no matter what the controversy is there. But I don't know. I just hope, like you, that the progression can keep going upward. I don't want to plateau, and I definitely don't want to move backwards unless it's a scenario where we're taking one step back to take two steps forward, because that's a real thing. But we just need to keep progressing on this because it's way more important than any of us think.
Here's my honest assessment of this. All the stuff we said about Trump is true, but the one aspect that we didn't mention is first and foremost, he is a businessman. And to steal from the WWE and the authority from years ago, what is best for business? What is best for business is to just ignore it and not say anything, because there's too much, oil companies, transportation companies, all this. If they talked about it in the movie, how I think it was Hal Puthoff had talked about it, it was a very redacted version of what actually happened, where they got all the people together to answer the 64 questions, the impact that disclosure would have on all these different segments of society, religion, philosophy, business. And at the end of the day, and the actual story as it actually goes is that it was a hypothetical that was posed to these guys and say, if the president was going to disclose the existence of NHI, go through here and put a plus or minus by all this stuff. And these guys all went into this thing thinking, oh, this is a no-brainer. There's so many benefits from disclosing. And at the end of the day, when they went through all the 64 questions and they looked at the results, the negatives outweighed the positives. And that's a big reason why disclosure has not happened. Trump's the same mindset. He's going to look at that and say, if I do this, if I even acknowledge that this movie happened, and I don't know if he can avoid acknowledging it completely because his Secretary of State is in there. So he's probably got to say something about it, or at least address it. But from the standpoint of him internally looking at this thinking, if I go and say anything, what is the impact to society, to business, to religion, to philosophy, to X, Y, Z? He's going to probably reach the same conclusion that was reached years ago. It's a sum negative. And if that's the case, you're not going to get anywhere with it. Now, on the other hand, the big push that we're doing lately is disclosures highly, highly unlikely going to come from the deep state or the government. But you talked about it earlier, how interconnected everybody is now. How everybody now has in their pockets, most of us have our own goddamn television studio, recording devices, sensors. You could add an app here or two and turn your phone into something that, when Zach Baggins and those guys started Ghost Adventures 20 years ago, they'd be like, God damn, this is awesome. So you can have that now in your pocket. And, they talked a lot about how keeping a secret for all these years seems impossible, but we know it can be done. We've seen it, nothing is more impossible than keeping a secret in the pro wrestling industry, as we know, until they do. And we've seen that a few times over the past years. Like, how did they keep that a secret in this day where social media is everywhere? Everybody's sharing information. It's so hard to keep a secret, but it can be done. You look at where we are now with everybody having this information at their fingertips. Does it become a lot harder for the government to keep this tamp down if people are saying, look, I got the evidence? I mean, you look at it this week, right? I mean, here's a perfect example. Three Eye Atlas. It's a comet. Sorry, DJ, it's a comet. We're not going to get invaded. But NASA does this press conference this week that is just like, what the shit is going on? And they show these pictures and they're like, huh? That looks like crap. And there's like a joke running around. It's like a 3 street lights in the fog. And this looks like one of those street lamps. Meanwhile, some like normal random dude, average Joe astronomer, takes this unbelievable picture of Three Eye Atlas. It clearly shows the tail and all this stuff. And you're like, wait a second. NASA versus amateur astronomer. This is where we're heading right now. And yes, AI is a big problem in this whole conversation because you have to be very discerning as to what is real, what is not. But at the same time, the people who aren't looking to game the system and fuck around and all that stuff are going to get really good concrete data that they're going to go to their friends, to people like, hopefully people like me or some of these other people who are aggregating this information, saying, look what I got. Look what I got. Hey, what do you got there? And AI is going to be able not to fake this stuff, but to maybe run some things to clarify images, to pull out some of the data that's not reliable and say, here's what I got. I think from the standpoint of citizens disclosing this, the chances of that have gone up exponentially. And as technology gets better and people are able to sense these things a lot better, the big breakthrough is probably going to come from us, people like us, or some of the more better There's something more better. There's great grammar. You'd never know I went to law school. But people like Beatrice Villarreal, who's done all the work on the transient objects, and shout out to her and that sort of thing, it's going to come from there. And if scientists start taking this seriously, like they should, there's going to be a breakthrough there. It's not going to come from the government. So whatever Trump does or doesn't do, or the next president, that sort of thing, okay. But within the next 5 to 7 years, something probably is going to break loose on the citizen disclosure aspect of things that is going to come forward with something undeniable or highly suggestive that, hey, here you go. What do you think about that?
I think publicly available technology to capture this has been there long enough that it should have probably already happened. Which leads me to a different question. Who's really in control of letting this become more known? Is it the government? Or is it these beings that we don't know? Are they already in control? Have they already
Yeah.
made deals with parts of people that are in power that's where the strings are being pulled? It leads you to ask those kind of questions.
Does. And you're right. Is there something in place? I mean, I always go back to the whole thing. Well, what could they possibly gain from us? Well, the water,
I
is one of the
swear,
greatest natural.
like if Kang and Kodos come down and they've been trying to tell us what's going to happen in life through The Simpsons for the last 30 plus fucking years. Like, I mean, all we would have to do is ask DP what's going to happen. He knows all about The Simpsons. He's been our greatest historian all along.
It's
I,
true.
I,
It's
I,
not
I,
just about Legos.
yeah, I make fun, but fuck.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is absolutely true. But and you look at historically, I mean, even through Hollywood, like what does Spielberg know when he did Close Encounters? Like people are talking about these aliens that come out, they look like the ones in Close Encounters. So you're like, what did Spielberg know in 77? What's going to happen with
Or,
this new movie that he's got coming out?
or is this like Inception? Do they have those type of powers?
Or he's one of them.
That too.
I mean,
I mean, Trump would be
yeah.
the biggest candidate, right?
Oh God.
Like Trump is from some kind of orange species that the only way he can maintain his human form is to have an orange tint.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I got to be orange or I, turn back into a mantid or something like that.
Like he comes out after like he gets the makeover to come down here and be human, and they're like, "You're kind of orange in that hair." He's like, "It'll be fine, best hair ever."
I'm with you. I really hope that this moves the conversation forward. I hope that my biggest hope for this is not that Trump gets up there and says, yeah, look, we're not alone. There are things here on the planet with us. We don't know exactly what they are. We don't know exactly if we can protect you. This is why we've kept this hush hush because we still, I mean, if he comes out and says, we still don't know what they are, that there's something here. This movie is accurate to a certain extent. We've lied to you because we don't know what it is and we don't know if we can protect you. If they say something like that, is there going to be a meltdown of society and mass panic in the streets? Probably not, because people are desensitized to that. And they're going to also be of the opinion like, well, they haven't vaporized us yet.
Well,
We vaporized more people than they have.
they'd all have to pick their heads up from this thing right here too, and go, huh?
Yeah.
Oh no, I can still look at my.
Swipe,
Never mind.
swipe.
Never.
Yeah, Andy
Huh?
who
Never
was
mind.
Andy from that UFO podcast. Shout out to Andy. He just had, and I'm looking it up right now because one of the great things about driving to LA last night was I got caught up on podcasts.
There you go.
I was able to listen to some stuff and I got through this thing. But Andy just had on his show, and I want to make sure that I get the name correctly. Who was it? Yeah, why academia has finally taken UFOs seriously with Dr. Christian Peters. And they were talking about this kind of issue as well, that like what you're talking about. You get these issues where you're just so desensitized to everything. Like somebody detonated a nuclear bomb in Jakarta or some shit like that, and it vaporized 20,000 people. That's terrible. Swipe, keep scrolling.
4 kids and a teacher were shot at a grade school in the South or in the West or near the Great Lakes. It's like, no, since I was a senior in high school in 1999, April of 1999, when Columbine happened.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, thank God I wasn't a bully, and thank God I'm almost out of here.
Yeah, but I mean, and it is this mindset where if it doesn't directly happen to you, you will sit there and say, God, that's awful. That's terrible. Who won the game last night?
Right.
I'm guilty of it too, and it shouldn't be that way, but I'm guilty of it too. And you're going to see, this whole thing where it's like, do you get the attention? Does this get the attention of anybody to really, does it make a dent in anything? I mean, I'm really hoping that, yeah, I mean, even if Trump said all that stuff, would it resonate for more than 5 minutes? Probably not. People be like, God, that's crazy. We're not alone here, but how does this I mean, here's the thing. We're not alone. There's things here on the planet with us. We don't know what exactly they are. We don't know if we can actually protect you, because people are going to, do I have to go to work tomorrow? Yeah, you got to go to work tomorrow. You got to pay your bills. Well, what the fuck do I care then? How does this impact me? There's a level of that is accurate. And you can relate. Like, people would be like, well, how does this really impact me? And they haven't bothered me for the last since 1947. I mean, all this stuff's going on. There all these sightings and stuff crashing. How does it impact me? You guys have gotten you've reverse engineered their technology. Where's my teleportation device? Where's my flying car? Where's my levitation device? You guys aren't sharing this shit with me. Why should I care? So there is that aspect. I'm hoping, though, that it does get more people asking those exact questions, right? That people watch this and say, hey, wait, you guys have been reverse engineered. Where is the teleportation device? Where are the clean energy cars? Why isn't this information and this technology being shared with humanity? Why are people still falling from the sky in airplanes? Exactly. Tunney's noting money. I go back to it, guys. Repeat this mantra. If you're new to this topic, maybe you're just tuning in. The people like me who are watching this right now are already going to know this. But if you're kind of new to this, if Age of Disclosure has brought you here and you watch this live or you watch the replay, repeat after me, kids. Money, power, control. It's what it's all about. It's what it's always been about. And as long as that's still at issue, probably not going to get very far, at least from the government standpoint. That doesn't mean you stop looking into it, though. Go ahead, Tony.
And basically, you can just take the first two words out because the first two words are equal to the third and final totality of the situation. Control. It's all about control because money is power and power is control, right?
It's like the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
Because if you had all the money in the world, but I had all the resources, I have the control and your money doesn't mean anything.
That's right. That's right. I seriously hope that everybody watches this movie. I would urge anybody who even, I mean, yeah, look, I mean, one of the criticisms for the movie is that I've heard is that, well, they didn't have any of the debunkers or the skeptics in there. Why would they? Why would you this is not the message you're trying to send. And those guys are the opposite extreme where, you've got one extreme that believes everything. And then you've got the other side that believes nothing. It's not about, it's one thing to be skeptical. You need to be skeptical. I think that's critically important. Anybody looking at this thing needs to be skeptical. This is why I like having you and DJ to be kind of like my anchors, because I definitely lean, which is ironic as an attorney, into the I believe first and ask questions later to a slight extent, and not overboard where I believe everything. 5149, that sort of thing. But it's vitally important to remain skeptical. Keep a skeptical mind. The whole idea that these people keep saying extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Well, okay, but extraordinary events require extraordinary investigation. And you guys are sitting there saying there is no extraordinary evidence. Well, what sort of investigation have you done into these extraordinary claims to come up with that evidence instead of just saying, it's all bullshit? Can't be done. Can't be proven. Therefore, there's nothing to this thing. So there's two sides to all this stuff.
The sheer volume of people that have been involved in high up government programs that are specifically connected and for these situations that are just on this Age of Disclosure, 111 minutes. You just have to go, like, there's no way all these guys just decided to make this all up together.
We come full circle.
It takes everyone to lie.
And that's a good place to end this thing because we come full circle to where we started. What is the motivation of all these guys to lie? They're not all of them retiring with, millions of dollars. In fact, they probably get more money by keeping their mouth shut, than coming forward and doing all this stuff. So again, what is the motivation? I go back to the same thing I've always said. What is the motivating factor behind all of these people to lie? And if they were lying, good God, what does that say about the United States government? You hired all of these people who are just absolute complete liars. You invested them with all your top secret, your highest level of clearance, and you were just so very wrong about their character, their integrity, that they would just come out here and make up all this bullshit. It makes no sense. It's like, okay, maybe a few of them, fine. I can buy that, but 34 of them? they're all lying or they're all mentally ill. I mean, if you look at it, the mental illness aspect of it, they're all mentally ill. We have got rampant levels of mental illness in this country that we have not accounted for.
Well,
None of that stuff makes
that's a
sense.
possibility outside of this factor, but
Well, that's true. Yeah, and that is not to say anything negative about the mental health situation in the nation, but I think from the standpoint of this, it's like you're saying, it is so difficult to sit there and watch this movie and say they're all lying. They're all full of shit. Because again, it's like, why? Why is this? I mean, if this is all counterintelligence, this seems like overkill. It's like you've already won. You've already won. Most of the people out there think that this is all nonsense anyway. So why do we have to go to these extremes to solidify the fact that it's nonsense when wait, you've already won. It's like running up the score. It's 75-3 in the fourth quarter. Let's score another touchdown. Let's keep airing the ball out here. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm with you. I'm not saying everything that these guys said was true. All right, let's get that straight. Certainly elements of it that have been exaggerated, if not outright fabricated. On the whole, 75% of this is probably completely accurate. And I just can't find the reasons why these dudes would lie to that extent. To some extent, white lies are one thing. To the extent that you're talking here in this movie, man, it's it's like you ever seen that movie She's Having a Baby with the legendary Kevin Bacon, where he goes into the job interview and it's like they're looking at his resume and it's like, so it says here you work for Netsu. It's like, yeah, Netsu. He's like, yeah, well, Netsu's one of our companies and we went and checked on it. You never worked there. In fact, with the exception of your name, there's nothing on here that is factual. You have set new standards for lying in the job market, sir. And it's like that. You guys, if they all lied, they have set new standards for lying in history. Mind numbing. But I think on that note, we're going to leave it here today. I urge everybody watch the movie for yourself, draw your own conclusions. Feel free to message me or to PC Tunney. Let us know what you think. I mean, are we completely full of shit? Which, I mean, we are about lots of things, but this is probably not one of them. I appreciate everybody who tuned in for the live stream today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Tunney, before we let you out of here, let people know where can they check you out on social media.
Follow me at PC Tunney. Most of your socials. If you want to interact with me or get a response, X is probably the place to go. You can also find everything we do on Chairshot Radio Network on all your favorite streaming platforms. And if you're looking for some great wrestling coverage, the Chairshot.com, Stephen Mitchell and Andrew Belaz got you covered there. But yeah, attitudeofaggression.com. Obviously, we are partners in crime over here. And just another great episode here of Unidentified History. Can't wait to figure out where we're going next with the Game of Thrones universe. And look for a Big Five WrestleMania 12 coming up. But yeah, I mean,
That's coming up today.
I I give you kudos, Dave, to how interested and how readily I am willing to learn and grow in this area. And I really enjoyed watching it this morning, and I can't wait for us to continue this series here and going back and doing more of the history, and then keeping up with what's going on now in the present is really something that's exciting.
Yeah, like Tony said, our later on today, for the pro wrestling fans out there, we will be putting out the next episode of the Big Five Project, focusing on WrestleMania 12. Meant to get that out a few days ago. It's just been busy this week and trying to kind of figure out how I'm piecing things together in that episode. Game of Thrones, we'll be coming back when Night of the Seven Kingdoms launches in January. They've already renewed it for a second season. So fuck, it's like, wow, we haven't even gotten to season one and you guys are already talking season two. Must be good. On Unidentified History, the next episode, we'll get some of the other guys in here. Rob, the genius, has promised me he will look at Tunguska because that is his idea. That is the next event we want to cover on Unidentified History, which is out of chronology. But like we were talking about earlier on this episode, we are taking the approach of going back through these historical events and looking at them a little bit differently. And we're having ChatGPT help us look at this stuff. And we're also looking at it with our own eyes to see, is there anything here that warrants further consideration? Tunguska is a fascinating event. Highly likely it's an airborne asteroid. I don't think there's too much of a dispute about that anymore, but we're still going to look at it. And it is a very anomalous and fascinating event. I mean, asteroids hitting the Earth, that doesn't happen every day. Once every 65 million years, apparently. So we will be taking a look at Tunguska on the next installment of Unidentified History. Then we'll be jumping into 1947. We're going to party like it's 1947, and we all know what happens in 1947.
You know what this unidentified history thing it really has done is make me think about events historically going way back. Like, specifically, whether you're religious or not, you can find scientific evidence that there was a great flood or that there was an ice age and that the dinosaurs got wiped out somehow. Was this an alien thing? You know, how long have they been here? We talk about the pyramids. We talk about different Stonehenge and shit like that. Like how we do this back then with no technology whatsoever. So it's a really fun way to look back and kind of take everything in history with a grain of salt and try to apply that principle.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they highly likely they've been here for a very long time, longer than we think, antiquity and earlier. For myself, I want to say if you go to the website, attitudeofaggression.com, that's got all the episodes, all the historical analysis documents that I'm probably really thinking about putting up on Substack. Because apparently I've got a channel there and like one subscriber, and I'm like, never even done anything. But okay, I can put all the stuff up there. But attitudeofaggression.com is where you want to go for all the episodes. X is the best way to follow me as well, at AttitudeAg. It is at AttitudeAGG. Thank you, Tunney, with your whiteboard. Facebook.com/attitudeofaggression. If you go there, please hit the like button. We'd appreciate it. And on YouTube, the YouTube channel is gaining in a little bit of traction here. YouTube, Attitude of Aggression channel. Go there where the video episodes are. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Spotify. You can send us an email, attitudeofaggression@gmail.com. If you guys want to, I'll be sure to answer that stuff. We'll do that on the next episode, or we'll just do it through social media. But that, my friends, if you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, if we haven't completely pissed you off with our takes here and you like what we're doing, please leave us a 5-star review. Thank you. On YouTube, please subscribe, like, comment, share, all that fun stuff. That is going to do it for this episode of Unidentified History, or Age of Disclosure review and recap, the neat and skinny version of this thing. Please, by all means, go watch this movie yourself. I don't think you'll be disappointed. If you know somebody even remotely interested in UFOs and they don't know where to start, or if they're even skeptical or on the fence, watch this movie. Tell them to watch this movie. Buy it for them. Make them come to your house and force them to watch it. Even better, because it's that important to the whole overall conversation. Until next time, guys, we will see you soon for the next episode of Unidentified History. Thank you, everybody who tuned in for the live stream today. We greatly appreciate it, and we will catch you guys soon. You all have a great weekend.